Welcome back to the EgoLess podcast. I've got world famous comedian Adam Hunter. He was on Last Comic Standing. If you look him up online, it says he is one of the hottest comics out there. And they're not just talking about his comedic skills. Host of the #1 comedy MMA podcast, MMA Roasted, Adam Hunter. Thanks for being on here, bro.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I know your time is short, so I'm just going to start, rapid firing these questions. One of my big sayings is that who you are is more important than what you do. If I was going to be making teddy bears for a living, I would be the best that I could at that, because it doesn't matter. And you're doing things that a lot of other comedians aren't doing. They've just got one track. But as I'm looking at your bio, you were a four-time wrestling champion. That wrestling doesn't go hand in hand with comedy. How did you go from being a four-time champion into comedy?
I mean, it does go a lot hand in hand in comedy, and there's a lot of similarities actually, because you have to depend on yourself. It's just you out there. You're as good as you want to be. The effort that you put in will directly reflect how well you do. As far as wrestling goes, I wasn't the most talented wrestler, but I just was showing up early. I stayed late. I worked hard. I went to wrestling camp, so did it all year round. And then eventually, I just became tougher and better than everyone else that I wrestled against. Not everyone, but most people. And same goes for comedy. It's just, stand-up comedy. It's really how hard you work, how many times you go up on stage a week, how many jokes you have, the quality of jokes you have, how much time you're putting into these jokes. Are you making the jokes funny? Are you working on them? How's your repetition? Laughs per minute. There's a lot of similarities. And also sometimes you'll be wrestling somebody, or I would be wrestling somebody, and the dude was just obviously better than me. I mean, he was bigger, stronger, faster. But I had to exploit one thing in him that I could do better than him in order to win the match. And same thing goes for comedy. And a lot of times you're on stage and people are just not laughing. You're up there 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 6, and you got to do 45 minutes to an hour. What do I got to do to change this course? And it's a lot of problem solving and, figuring out on the fly what you need to do, what buttons you need to do to get better. As far as how I got into it, well, I when I was younger, I got into a lot of issues as far as my mom left when I was a kid, and I just I haven't seen her since I was 3 years old, and I was a pretty angry kid, and had a stepmother that we didn't get along at all, and I just didn't really have a lot of confidence, and started hanging out with the wrong crowd and doing the wrong things, and got sent to this boarding school in Maine, which really focused on character development and making you a better person, and really like you said, if you're gonna sell teddy bears, be the best teddy bear. And it was basically how much effort you put into something is more valuable than what the achievement is. Eventually the achievement will come. It was all about also making the world a better place. What's going to fulfill you as a human being. So when I wrestled in college, and I wasn't very happy when I got there, and I just kind of got burned out, and I was cutting too much weight. And my ego was actually too big, and I wasn't starting on the team. And so I went down a weight class that I shouldn't have, and losing 20 pounds a week, and yada, yada. I just quit the team. And then when I quit, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll become a talk show host, because there was a talk show that I used to watch, this funny show where you could prank the people on the show. You weren't supposed to, but so I ended up got my own talk show on television, on Binghamton Television, and pretended to learn the things. And I went down there. It's called D's Nuts, and I had a bunch of my friends who wrestled, and some Budweiser model, and people were it was uncensored, and people were just calling in saying some of the meanest things ever, but it was a lot of fun. I was laughing. They were like, "Are you Vanilla Ice or Corey Haim?" Or, this, that. And so it ended up causing a riot on campus, and I ended up getting sued for $20 million. That might take up the entire podcast if I tell the story, but it was the most fun I've ever had, was being a talk show host. But I was after that, I'm I want to be a comedian. So I was living in New York, and I dropped out of college, and I took a couple comedy classes and open mics, and now 23 years later, I'm still a comic, and I've been on the Tonight Show and Last Comic Standing. And
I honestly, I did not think about that at all, because I grew up wrestling, and my dad was a big wrestler. I mean, I got pictures with Dan Gable, met Randy Couture at the 2000, Olympic trials. Like that's all, dude, that's all we did is eat, sleep, and breathe wrestling. And you're right, because I didn't think about it like that, but it makes you a different kind of person. I remember being like 8 years old and my dad, everybody's eating my birthday cake on my birthday, except for me. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like they're like, no, you're not going to do it. And then, sitting at weigh-ins and I'm a pound over, like, you got to sit on the toilet until you make weight
Right.
to come back. And then, even having to like get down to my underwear in front of all these people, like that was like traumatic as a kid. And that's why I ended up getting out of it. But dude, it does, like the same disciplines and things do correlate. I didn't even see that. For me, one of the biggest things, like, dude, that the discipline that you've got, that mental discipline, because like, if you're up there for 45 minutes and you got people booing, how did you develop that mental discipline to be up there just to keep going? Because I was even when I was there, right? The comic before you was not that funny. And Naples is a tough crowd, dude. I mean, they're like average age. They call it Heaven's Waiting Room because the average age is like 80 years old. And for a comedian to make everybody laugh, they're like, dude, you kept going with it. And about 5 minutes in, it just took off. How did you develop that mental discipline to keep doing that?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, every comic, I think it's like one of the hardest things to do is to have confidence in yourself. Like the first time you get like a laugh, it's like almost like a drug shoots through you, and then you get addicted because you're like, wow, this is the greatest feeling. I'm responsible for people having a good time, and people are laughing, and then the more you do it, you're seeing people cry because they're laughing so hard, or they're like, oh, my face hurt, or man, I was having the worst day ever, and I got some horrible medical I had some hard medical news, and I went to the club and you cheered me up. So it's stuff like that you're just like, so it's amazing. But I mean, there's really not a good comic out there that hasn't bombed. And the good thing about comedy is how, well, except for during pandemics, but is how accessible the stage is. So you could bomb on Tuesday, but you have another show Wednesday. Sometimes you could bomb on Tuesday at 8 o'clock and you have a show at 10 o'clock. So you could get over it. It's harder for like let's say a fighter who fights every 6 months and gets knocked out. Now he has to wait 6 months to prove that he can do well again, So the good part is like how quick it is. And sometimes it's harder when you get like big opportunities and you bomb, like if you bomb on television and you can't really go back. But I don't know. It's just it's just toughness, it's thick skin. It's not letting it get to you. In the beginning, it's really hard because, the clubs that I was performing at weren't necessarily the clubs that were going to appreciate my comedy the most, I mean, I was, when I first started doing comedy, I was doing comedy in laundromats. People were doing laundry while I was telling jokes. And then supermarkets, like in front of the express lanes. And then it was Times Square, all tourists. A lot of them even didn't speak English, or they didn't have like a common language, or, any kind of local reference was not going to work. You had to have a joke that was so broad that everyone would get it. Or I would do certain, like the Puerto Rican comedy night, and I would be the only white guy, or the all black comedy show. I was just getting where they would take you, but not necessarily where you would do the best, And then eventually, but that's just how it goes. And, the good thing about comedy is it's sort of like in that movie, I think it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, or maybe Temple of Doom, when Indiana Jones has to like get that like crystal.
Yep.
And it's like the hardest thing ever. And there's like invisible stairs show up. And then that's kind of what comedy is. Like there's no rhyme or reason why people make it. Sometimes people make it too early, sometimes too late. Some people never make it and they're hilarious. And there's no guarantees. It's not like, medical school where, you are becoming a doctor, where you graduate and then you go to med school and then you get, you're in an internship and then you become a doctor. And then if you're a doctor, you're going to get good pay or decent pay. Whereas you can do comedy for 50 years and never be good. And you could do comedy for 3 years, but you're on the right podcast or sitcom or movie, and all of a sudden you're like a major draw. Now, the thing is that eventually, things catch up to you. Like there's comics that have done really well financially, but they haven't really done the work. And once their thing runs out, whether it's like a platform, like let's say they were big on Vine or, you know, TikTok or something, and then now they have to go back and it's like they didn't do the work, and then that's going to show. You know, it's just a matter of just having a lot of nerve, having a lot of gall, and having a lot of belief, but also being stubborn, you know?
No, and I think because like, so people look at the platform and they want to be, oh, like I want that, but they didn't even start out like at the small beginnings. Like, you started in the laundromat, right? Where you couldn't get booked there, but you started in the laundromat. And I think that's the biggest difference maker right now, because with everything going on, I mean, you're doing Zoom comedy when, everything's shut down. Like, that's hard because, comedy is not just about telling a funny joke, but it's about the atmosphere. And so like that's what I like, because you're not only just like, you're not doing just one thing. You got the MMA Roasted, you've got, the Fox MMA Award, like all of that stuff. You've got like what, 4, 5, 6 different things going, plus TV shows. Did you just say, hey, I don't want to just do just this one thing. I want to kind of be able to branch out, or how did that come about?
I mean, a lot of it is, unfortunately, the way the business is, it's almost really hard. It used to be like, people will talk to you about like the golden age of comedy, where like in the 80s, you could make a living like just being a comic. I don't know if that's true. I didn't really live that time, but that's what like people say. And then, so much of it is like drawing power now, where it's like how many like asses in seats, how many people are going to come to see you. And, unfortunately and fortunately, it's got its positives and negatives. It's like, podcasting is a big way to get people to come to shows, also is, the internet or Instagram or whatever. I just like to do things that like, like I coach wrestling for little kids. Like I love coaching for 13 years, started a high school program. And there were like so many funny moments that I would tell my friends about, like, this is a TV show. So I went out and like crowdsourced and came up and shot my own television show called Pinned, about a comedian who's a wrestling coach. And now I'm trying to sell that, some of my best moments doing comedy were just when people did not want to see comedy. Cause I've done so many terrible shows where like you'd be at a bar and it'd be game 7 and it's an overtime between the Lakers and whoever. And then they turn off the TV. They go, time for jokes, which is like, could not be a worse time. And everyone's mad and pissed. But it was some of the most funny or memorable. I mean, I've done shows in boxing rings in between fights. I mean, I've done shows at a wedding where I got attacked by.
I watched it. That guy came out. I was like looking. I was like, is that staged? And I was like, no, that guy was legitimately pissed.
No, yeah, and that got like millions of hits. So because of all these ridiculous situations that, unfortunately, I felt like people were not privy to, because they were only seeing like the end result. Like they were only seeing the show on Comedy Central, the comic in front. I'm like, man, this needs to be a show. So I went out and started like a show called Kamikaze Comedy, where it's comedy where people don't expect it, or then it kind of morphs into ambush stand-up. So like those clips are out. So a lot of it is just like things that I believe in. I'm a big MMA fan. I love MMA. I was writing for John Heffron, who was hosting MMA Awards, and I came up with a bunch of sketches that were like went viral. I wrote like the Daniel Cormier singing All About That Cake and Chicken. I got like 40 million hits, and Ben Askren singing this, and then Woodley and Brandy Couture doing I'm Gonna Take My Gloves to the Octagon to the Old Town Road, and that got millions of hits. So that just like kind of led to a job with Fox Sports and with the UFC and with the PFL. So just like I've been able to kind of take my like passions and getting jobs for them. I mean, and that's fun. It's a blessing. Now it's like this year's been tough because like I was supposed to write all the sketches for the MMA Awards, and that got canceled July 4th. I got moved to October. I had a job with the PFL. The whole season got postponed. All my comedy gigs, like my 20 comedy dates got canceled. I was supposed to go to China for the second time in September. I was supposed to go to Australia in November. So it's been kind of it's been a tough quarantine as far as business goes, but luckily some other things came up, and spending the time with my family and my daughter and my wife. So, it is what it is.
Luckily you're in a position where you've got those other things going. Like it probably is tough, but I mean, the way you do anything is the way that you do everything. So it's like, you're gonna succeed. You succeed in MMA, all that, in everything. So I think that's incredible. My last question to you is comedy dead in this cancel culture? Because you have to be very, very careful. Like, so if you get on the internet right now, so you can get on Google and you could type in white people jokes. You can type in, whatever, Christian jokes, Muslim jokes, Mormon jokes, and all kinds of jokes will pop up, right? If you type in, and I'm not against anything at all, but if you type in online gay jokes or transgender jokes, you can't pull anything up on Google. Nothing pulls up. And you look at cancel culture now to where it's like comedy, everybody, I mean, I can, I make fun of myself. Like there's, that's what comedy is. To where, do you feel like comedy is slowly dying? And how do you
I don't think that the comedy is dying. I think the medium of where you do it, you have to just I think that like stand-up comedy in comedy clubs is a safe haven for those kind of jokes, as long as they're funny. I think a lot of comedy clubs, the ones that I play at, somebody goes there, somebody makes a gay joke, the gay guy goes to the owner, hey, the guy made it, like whatever. Like a lot of times they'll have a warning before the show, like, hey, just so you know, you may hear some things that that may be offensive, like no money back. So I don't think that comedy's dead there. I think the comedy is dead on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok. Like if I make a gay joke on TikTok or Twitter or Facebook, people can get offended. But that's because if you look at it, unless my tweets are protected and I know exactly who is on my feed, that joke you told to everybody. So when you tell a joke to everybody, it's like you're kind of, everyone gets a fucking say.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate, because so what if it offended you? It's like, that's what humor is supposed to do, you know?
When I was at the comedy club, you made fun of my suit that I was wearing, but like that was the point of me wearing the suit. You know what I mean?
It was a brilliant.
But when you look at like cancel culture now with with the coronavirus, like stand up, with everything being closed, it could happen again. So it's like those people are cut off, and that's what I mean. Because if you're in that cancel culture, and you canceled on Twitter and all these places, you really don't have a platform and a way of doing anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sucks. It sucks. It does suck. And like, to have to go for comics now, to have to go look at all their tweets from day one and delete anything someone might offensive is like, it sucks. I mean, it's not fun. And it's also like, great. Like, what did people achieve from that? Like you haven't made the world a better place by making people not laugh, and what offends somebody, and people get offended about jokes about ketchup. I mean, it's like, you don't know what's going to offend people. My cousin died from ketchup. Well, it wasn't about your cousin, so it's like, to me, it is sad that people are not mature enough to look at a joke, hear a joke and be like, okay, that wasn't for me, but so now I'm going to get that person fired, or try to. But I think enough people are just going, you know what, fuck this. Plus, a lot of comics, the problem is, like, the good thing about comedians is, like, who are you going to cancel them from? Unless they're on a TV show.
Exactly.
Or, now, cancel culture also there's a difference. I mean, like, some people get allegations of like raped, or if they get charged of rape or charged with statutory rape or trying to fuck, whatever, kids. That's not really cancel culture. That's like breaking the law.
Yeah. It's a little bit,
I mean,
different.
If it's proven they did that thing, I'm not saying if you get accused of something, but to me, cancel culture would be like when Kevin Hart made a joke that wasn't that funny, but it was a joke. And he said, if my kid's gay, I'm going to hit him in the head. It was a fucking joke. Maybe it didn't land. The problem also with jokes is that for every 10 jokes you tell, maybe 3 will work, which means 7 won't. 7 of those jokes are not going to land for whatever reason. And
let me ask you a question real quick on that. When you talk about, like, you know, with Kevin Hart, because dude, at first he stood his ground. He's like, you know what? Hey, it was a joke. Like, I'm cool with this. No problem's a joke. I'm not going to apologize for a joke. And like stood his ground, which is just like, hey, that's what I would have done. But then it got to a point to where he had to come in and apologize, even though he had already, like, told people, hey, like, there's no issues against, whatsoever. But he had to come back and apologize. And you've seen his team really pushing him hard. And like that, to me, it's like, dang it, I don't want to be so controlled by people. But then at the end of the day, when that's your audience, like, what else are you going to do?
Well, I think what happened probably was he was doing the math, and like his people probably said, hey, listen, if you don't apologize, we're going to lose X, Y, Z, and that's going to be $10 million. So, or 20 million, or whatever the number was. And he probably just figured, all right, apologize and keep the money, or don't apologize and lose the money. What's more important, And then when you trying to put, your whole family through the school or whatever he's doing, probably did the math. I mean, there's a lot of jokes that I'll make like that. You go, all right, this is funny, but at what expense?
Yeah.
And that's the worst though, because then you're not thinking of making people laugh. You're thinking about who am I not going to offend. And the problem is the people that like come at you and try to get you fired never apologize if they're wrong. They just move on to someone else, the quote unquote mob. And then also the people that are offended, they're not your fans anyway.
No, dude, I heard a stat that 60% of all Twitter accounts are bots. 60%. Pushing agendas to where it's like, you get on. I mean, I look on, like, I'm in the data sector, so I know about data. And I mean, there's off India sites to where, hey, you can buy 10,000 Twitter accounts that look like real people that can go tweet out and do whatever it is that you want them to do. If you want them to, hey, you want to blast somebody, they're going to blast somebody. And we're in a day and age where the internet is becoming more real than reality, and it's going to keep going that way. I mean, did you look at the show Catfish, right? People are falling in love with somebody texting back that's not even the person.
I mean, like for me, it was like once I started meeting some of the people that were insulting me, I felt a lot better about my own life. Because I was like, you always think like the person that's criticizing you, or at least I did at first, was like just a really smart human being with a wife or a boyfriend or husband and kids, and they live in this mansion, and they're just like this great people, and they're coming after me. And then when I would meet the people in person, I'm like, this is the most like disturbing looking human being ever. I look like I hadn't showered in like months, and you're like just yellow teeth, and they're just out of shape, and like you're like, wait, this is the person who's I was worried about the whole time. Like, this is the person that was judging me, and that was fucking me up. So that in some ways made me feel better, because I was like, all right, like before let me do a little research. But that's on both sides. I mean, I know people that like all day long, they talk about how much Donald Trump is the worst. Donald Trump's a cheater on his wife. And these are people that I know cheat on their wives. I know people that are banned from comedy clubs for like groping women that are trying to get him fired. And I'm not defending Donald Trump. Okay. I'm not, but I'm saying I'm like, whoa, like you're banned from comedy clubs for literally taking pictures of women and trying to stick your fingers down their skirts, whatever. And you're blasting this dude's character. And I'm like, what, like, are we not? So a lot of times it's a lot easier to, but I think that's also what pisses people off the most on the right is when they get lectured by celebrities. It's like when Ellen DeGeneres lectures people on being a good person, and then it comes out that she won't take a picture with a handicapped kid because she doesn't take photos of handicapped kids, or hey, Ellen DeGeneres is, and this is all allegations, but she's like, hey, do the right thing and be this and be that, but then she won't look. But then you don't have to look her in the eye, and you have to chew gum.
She's about to cancel her show. You
have to chew gum before you talk to her. because she doesn't want to smell your breath. I mean, that's the kind of person who's lecturing you on kindness. And I think that's what pisses people off. And that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to be a celebrity and you are a celebrity, you have a voice, before you start like telling everyone how to live their lives, maybe get your own life in check. And maybe maybe, maybe show people how to live their life through your actions, but
and it seems like, dude, especially with like celebrities and things like that, it seems like there is an epidemic when it comes to like unchecked power. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at these people who feel like they are powerful. It's like those people were good at one point, but like, what the heck happened? Did you look at people in the Catholic Church, like the high up priests, and it's like the scams going on, like what in the world is going on? But it's these people. And as I was, like hearing stories, it's like, well, when they would ask me something, we felt like it was like God asking us because of the power. And then the same thing with these celebrities. It's like, dude, once people get power, like they get weird. Really weird.
They get weird. And I think they get like, I mean, one of the good things about being a comic is that every day I have to like talk to people of all different economic, backgrounds and all walks of life and make them laugh. Whether it's shows for homeless people or shows for blind people or shows for billionaires or shows for battered women. So I really got to, like, on some level, connect with these people, and that kind of opens my eyes. And I'm not saying I'm better than the people, but I'm saying it's the kind of job that, like, I'm not flying, private jets around the world and staying at, 12-star fucking hotels. I'm staying at like, Motel 6s and sometimes like, whatever. But it forces me to really like see how people are. And it also forces me to kind of, look at myself and yada, yada. I think a lot of times when you have like actors or musicians and they get to a certain point, or even comics, and then they don't have to like interact with anybody anymore.
That's it. Yeah, they don't have to.
They just interact with people like they think that it's normal for everyone to have Teslas and to drop 30 grand on dinner or to say one thing and mean the other. And they just lose focus of like what the fuck the rest of the world's doing.
Like what's actually going on too. And because when you look at, when they are out of touch with reality, it's like, why are we taking our what to do, like taking advice from people who are so out of touch with reality, have no idea what's going on, but they know, hey, if I don't talk this certain way or do this, like I'm going to have cancel culture when it comes to like acting and things like that. So they're pushing this agenda. And it's like, for me, it's like, why don't people wake up and see things like, hey, go just research it for yourself. I'm not pushing, one agenda or another. Just research something for yourself.
Yeah, no, totally.
Somebody who makes a candle who smells like her vagina.
Right.
That's like if my neighbor did that and was like, hey, I'm your neighbor and I want to let you know I made a candle that smelled like my vagina, I'd be like, you're freaking crazy. But because somebody's famous, we're like, oh, she's an artist. Like, that's not art. That's weird.
And I think athletes get to that point too. I think the good thing about fighters that I talk to is that they go back to practice and getting the shit kicked out of them. So most of them like get humbled day in and day out, so that they kind of don't lose focus of that.
I mean, even same thing with Conor McGregor, where everybody thought he was like arrogant and all this stuff. Like, that dude had like all the, the crap that dude had to put up with, with that image that he was portraying. Like it had to keep him humble.
Yeah.
Like, not humble, but it's still checked to where it's not like he can just do anything. But dude, well, I know you probably got to run. I'll do whatever I can to get you back on to do like a part 2.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
Where can people find you?
Find me at Adam Comedian on Instagram, at Adam Comedian on Twitter. If you're an MMA fan, at MMA Roasted, and at MMA Roasted podcast.
Awesome, Adam. Dude, I appreciate you, bro. I look
forward
to
you, man. Thank you,
your friend, bro.
Thanks, Jake. Let's definitely stay in touch.
All right, man. See ya.
Get your ego out the way.